Hello, heathens.
Hello, heathens.
Welcome back to another episode of Heathens for the People. It's like dark and gloomy out and rainy, which is good for Michigan people because this means spring is on the horizon,
Oh my
which,
God. I heard the
yes.
crickets and the frogs.
Ooh, we're so excited. But it is like a cozy day where I just want to be in loungewear all day and like
Mm-hmm.
live my cottagecore dream of having hot tea by a fire,
You're
reading a book.
right. I'll snuggle into like some pillows and some
Oh,
blankets,
yeah, but
watching a good horror movie.
see, at that point, I'd have to come over though, because when I say Nicole, is it your Venus is in Taurus, right?
No, my moon.
Your moon. I don't know exactly what this is about you, but when I say you have comfort on lock and key, her bed and her room is just dark and everything's soft and everything's fluffy. And like now she's got a
Mm-hmm.
big old TV in there. And like the way that I just want to be locked into that bed, snuggled up, watching
It's
horror.
it's cave-like.
Yes, it's so comfy in there. And you got like
Mm-hmm.
silk everywhere and fluffy blankets and
I'll like try to read in there right before bed or whenever, and I'm like,
yeah, it's like almost immediately.
mm-hmm.
The way I could like sleep in your bed in your bedroom all day and not give a rat's ass about anything
No,
else.
I will doom scroll for hours because I'm just so comfortable. And then I was like,
Absolutely.
get up. Mm.
You're yelling at yourself. You need to get up. And it's like, but my bed, but my bed.
I'm always like, I gotta,
It's
like it's
full.
mud.
Sorry, I can't. My bed's holding on to me. It doesn't want me to leave.
I must rot here.
Yes, literally.
I will become one with the earth.
It, it's setting in the rigor mortis.
Absolutely. Rigor mortis.
Is setting in. Okay, so we are finally, after moving this back a couple times, we're finally doing part one and part two of the four agreements. I know we went over them kind of lightly, honestly, and we explained them pretty well, I would say, but I feel like we need to go deeper into these because also rereading these chapters about the agreements made me realize that it it's easy to understand, but there is more examples and more ways to be thinking of these agreements other than just saying the agreement and that being it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that because like it's so simple because I mean you could remember what the four agreements are and then but I feel like it's really hard to catch you in the act of
Yes.
doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to implement into your life. And
Yeah.
I know I struggle with like it's almost like struggling with like victimhood. So like you struggle, you're like, well, you did this to me and you did that to me and blah blah blah. Now I'm angry and blah, whatever. And I'm justified in my anger no matter what it is, right?
Yeah.
And then but then like it's funny because as I go through that like waterfall there, I also am like, well, you're taking this personally. And I almost don't want to see it.
Yeah.
I don't want to find my way to the truth.
Nope.
And I'm like, no, that's not true. I'm taking it personally. I'm like, fuck. And then I have to find, it's almost like having 2 points. It's like, okay, you're over here. And then what you're doing is, or the agreement is here. So it's almost like you have to find the bridge for the two to get together. Like how? Like I feel wronged some way, some shape, some form. And then like I know I'm not supposed to take it personally. So now we have to get to like how?
Yeah.
At least in my brain. My brain has to be like, how am I taking this personally? How am I not righteous in my anger, in my sadness, in my depression,
Disappointment,
whatever.
anything, right?
Yeah. How am I not righteous in that feeling? Because I know I'm taking it personally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a very interesting like, and then the funny thing is when you think you got it,
Yeah, yeah,
new level, new devil.
for real. And like to add to that experience too, the other side, the flip side of that coin for me has been the beauty of finding this and like being able to remind myself of this is when I'm really down in the dumps because I did take something personally, especially like say it's like a tension with a loved one or partner or something like that. When I'm really deep in and I'm like, God, I'm feeling so bad for myself and I really don't know how to get out of this. If I start
Mm-hmm.
mantraing, don't take, you're taking this personally, it does help me to feel better because then I'm like, okay, yeah, duh, I am taking this personally and that fucking hurts, but like, I don't need to be. I'm not supposed to be taking this personally and this isn't about me. And then I start feeling better.
Right,
Like
right.
I can pull myself out of the victimhood of, oh, my life sucks. Everything in my life sucks.
Everything in my
And
life
nobody
sucks.
loves me and
I'm
I'm
so bad.
alone. And
I'm so
yeah,
alone.
and everything else we like to tell
Woe is
ourselves.
me.
Yes. Yeah. It's the woe is me that I feel like the don't take it personally specifically has really helped me sometimes. Because don't get me wrong, I don't always remember it because, like you just said, it's so hard to remember all the
Hmm.
time. But when I do, my God, sometimes it helps me a lot to just be like, oh, God, okay. At least with sadness, I found it helps. With anger, I think that has been a different experience for me where God, anger is a harder one to just cool down with the water of don't take this personally. And I'm like,
Hmm.
she's not getting cool. She's really hot still. If I touch that, it's going to burn me and nothing's
Ow,
cooling that flame.
ow, ow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because like anger, well, you're all revved up. Like sadness is a little easier because you're already in a very septive mood kind of thing. Where
Hmm.
like anger is like, ah.
I will 300 kick you.
And again, it goes back to that whole thing of like, you're righteous in you're righteous in it.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to be angry because you did this to me.
Yes. Yes. And that's like I don't know if this will be in this episode or in the next when I put this down, but in rereading the book, there was this part that really still I've been keeping with me that said like when you start practicing a lot of like if you can practice all four, but even if you start practicing one, you start becoming very aware of the words you're, oh yeah, it would be in this one, be impeccable with your word. But you become
Mhm.
aware of the words you're saying as well as the words other people are saying.
Yes.
And you start becoming aware of when your own ego has stepped in front of you to do whatever it wants to do. The Tyrant King, we've talked about it before, just steps right up there and says, I'm doing whatever the fuck I want to do. And you're like, did I just say that? Because, like,
Hmm.
ooh. And it's like almost like
Yeah.
the minute you become aware of it and you're like, oh,
Ugh.
shame, ding, ding.
Oh. I'm
Yeah.
always like, oh, like, I'm like, okay, you're annoying yourself.
That says a lot, right? It's like this
Hmm.
awareness that comes in where you start, yeah, you start annoying the hell out of yourself. And you're like,
Hmm.
why the fuck did I just say that? Who said
Hmm.
that? Did I say that? Are we sure?
Well, and that's the funny thing is I move along or depending on what it is, I'll be like, "Ah, I'm sorry. That was my ego. Let me just shut up. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
it trigger response. So sorry.
I've definitely done that. Even with you before, I've had to realize what the fuck I said in the moment. And I'm like, I am so sorry. Like,
Hmm.
that was shitty. And I take full responsibility for the shitty words that just came out of my I pooped on you with
Right.
words. It's crazy when you notice it, but I have to say, like, the amount of like humility that you gain and vulnerability that you gain and overall love that you allow yourself to receive and give in these steps, I think is worth it. It just, we've said it before and I'll say it again. These four agreements have changed my life with myself as well as my relationship with others, I think, for the best. And even though,
Hmm.
we're always a work in progress, I feel like it's just made things so much easier.
It's a lifelong practice.
Yeah.
It's like you're never gonna not think about. I mean, maybe once it gets ingrained and like that contract or that agreement that you have with yourself has broken all the other agreements, like it would probably become more as a self-running program than
Mm,
like you really working at it. But really what it's doing is every time it comes up, it's severing ties with an old agreement that you have and then putting in the new agreement that you're working on. And
yeah.
that's what you're doing. So when it comes up, when anger, when sadness, when depression comes up, and this is by no means by like actually saying that you should bypass that feeling or not feel that feeling or not give it the righteousness that it needs. What I'm
Hmm.
saying is don't spew it on other people.
Yes.
Because it's something you work through. And a lot of times like if somebody's hurt me, it sometimes it takes 6 months to get over it. Sometimes it takes 3 weeks to get over it. Sometimes it takes 2 weeks. I come to that understanding a little bit quicker every time. So don't beat yourself up on like, oh, I should be doing this or blah, blah, blah. I shouldn't be taking when it comes up. You haven't, if it comes up again, the anger, the sadness, the depression, whatever it is, if it comes up again, realize that like you took a little bit of it and that's all you could handle.
Yeah.
And then it goes back down. But if it comes back up because you've been triggered or whatever, then you know that you're just working on it little bits at a time. And eventually it'll kind of like dissipate or be less polluted.
Yeah. I feel like now, I don't know if this is still a thing 'cause your girl doesn't know a lot about computers anymore, but back when we had dial-up and stuff, viruses were a big thing. So we had to like run
Hmm.
antivirus systems a lot. And I feel like this is our own personal antivirus system, right? It's like the four agreements. Like it runs when it needs to and it clears some things
Right.
out. And it's like, it doesn't, for right now, it doesn't run all the time, but eventually, like you had said, it could potentially just be running all the time and there won't be a virus that can get in because or one that could get out from your system.
Well, even if that's the nice thing is like that's almost your own protection because, or your own, virus safety thing.
Yeah.
Antivirus. There we go.
Antivirus,
I was
yes.
like, what is that called in computer language?
You got it pretty quick. I was like, I don't know, some virus thing that takes the viruses away.
Right. So it almost is your own shield or quickly understanding of like where it's coming from and why you're not taking it personally instead of like automatically being like triggered.
Yeah. Um, so in uh-huh.
Whoa, whoa,
You guys got
whoa.
that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in rereading the four agreements, the first chapter and the first agreement, not first chapter, is be impeccable with your word. And the book really stresses that this is the most important agreement because all the three agreements branch off this one, and it's also the most difficult to honor, which my God, is that not one of the truest statements? Because in reading this book, I realized how much that my brain my mouth moves faster than I want it to, and I let it. It's almost like a wild horse. I just let it do its thing, and sometimes it's running through pastures and breaking stuff, kicking shit over, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not tamed at all. It's just goes. And I was thinking about it and I was like, I feel like the unconscious part of me sometimes has so much control. Like I almost step back my conscious and let things just happen because I'm like dissociating in a way. And I just let my
Mm-hmm.
words say whatever they feel like saying. And then I am struggling because I realize what I said and I'm like, whoa, 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 bring it back in. Bring it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So like,
before you know it, you're running a full-on race and you've killed the barn and
yeah.
you're jumped over the fence and now you're like
And then you step and you're like,
wreaking
wait,
havoc in the village.
yeah, literally. So I agree with the book, stressing that this is one of the most difficult ones to honor because I think that we say things without recognizing what we say all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. And it's either out of habit or conditioning or programming or, the people we have around us. It's could be many different things.
Well, I don't think we're ever taught that our words mean anything. And I think that's why we end up talking a lot is because we just like, well, there's no harm, no foul. If I do a little bit of this or I do a little bit of this, we don't even think about what we're actually saying because we're taught like generationally how to speak, how to have that cadence, how to connect with people, like depending on like how you've overheard your grandparents or your parents, like, talk with each other or talk with their friends. Like, remember
Hmm.
those times when we sat and just listened and like watch the adults like talk, or if you were in the other room and maybe they didn't know you were listening, or that kind of thing is like we are taught how to do that by just that,
Yeah,
by just being in that presence and looking and basically mimicking what we have seen.
absolutely. That's huge. I feel like even as you go through high school and stuff, you're still learning around you, like how people talk in middle school, like you see it too through other kids around you that have learned from others. And it's just this big mass of like sifting you have to do when you start going through the screaming of like what's me and what's not me.
Well, that's why junior high and high school is so hard, is because you've got kids that are mimicking their parents because they're trying to be adult-like because being a kid is powerless.
Hmm.
So now we want to be more powerful. So we see our mom, we see our dad, we like see how they talk to their friends, we see how they use their words in everyday life with us, with other people, the connections that they have. Like we see this, so we imitate it because especially in high school and junior high, we're not out in the real world yet. Like, so we only know what we only know. We haven't seen that there's another way of like communicating, or another way, or even being realized like what I'm saying hurts me and I'm
Hmm.
hurting you at the same time, not being aware of like that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. Like in going with what we've been saying, because of course Nicole's always like right on the money with what I have written down. This is not pre-planned and we don't normally go through this, but there's a part of the book that goes along with what she was just saying really well that says words have power. And we mention this often. It's how we create and manifest our lives through words. You express your creative power. And with this is a quote I wanted to read from the book that I just thought was so cool. And it was like, but like a sword with two edges, your
Yeah.
words can create the most beautiful dream, or your words can destroy everything around you. And that quote from the book gives me chills
Hmm.
because the way that guys, talked about this before, but to bring it up again, I had a fire in my apartment. The way that I created that fire with my words and now recognize it and have for a little while, where it was like, fuck, I did that. I
Hmm.
did that. Now, can I remember exactly what my words were? No, because that was a couple of years ago and there's been plenty of other things, but I do remember finally realizing like shit, I created that. I talked about it. I did all these things that were like, well, you put two and two together, so we're giving you four. And I was like,
Hmm.
it was a hard realization to have, but like my words did that.
Hmm.
It was my fault.
Well, I
And
mean,
not fault in a bad way, but
it's not about fault, because we're really quick about delivering out punishment, right? Like, so it's just an experience in what you did.
yeah, I guess
Do you
responsibility
know?
would be a better word. Because I don't
Right.
feel blame in it as much as I feel like very aware of the fact that like what I did and what I said, my actions and words, it was the recipe for it.
Well, if you were doing a science experiment, it wouldn't be your fault. Do you
Yeah,
know
I
what I
guess I didn't
mean?
mean to use
It's not
fault.
like if, you know, like you have this experience, because what we're here to do, the big thing about this is that we do this as a society. Like, either I want to mother everybody out there, like, you should be going the speed limit and you should not be cutting me off, and that's not very good. And like, nobody likes that. But like, we, you have this righteous of like, oh, we want to deliver this punishment. You're bad, and this is what makes you bad, and you shouldn't do this. Or the other thing is like, just because they have a different opinion, it's about, um, you're stupid. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
it's this whole thing. And again, it's going back to being impeccable with your word. You know, if you're saying that, what was it? Somebody else was saying something that was like, and she said the word like three, four times, and I was like, oh, I forget. So we'll move on.
Hmm.
But it's one of those things is like, if you're unaware of what the words you're saying, you're still creating those. That's a program. That's a
Yeah.
program that has been running for years, and you have no idea because it's invisible at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of this, the agreements are deprogramming.
Hmm.
And there's a whole section in the book that we're not going to bring the whole book to you. Obviously, we really want you guys to read it in yourself, but there is a part about deprogramming and what that looks like and how we have been programmed our whole entire
Hmm.
lives. And like these agreements are going to help deprogram us.
Hmm.
Now, like Nicole and I talk about planting seeds often, but like during this agreement is when this is another form of us talking about it. Because the seeds are opinions, ideas, and concepts, and you plant a seed or a thought, and then it grows. And that happens through word.
It's the spell. It's the first thing of manifestation. It's air. Um, in even if we go with like God, in the first, like, whatever, God created the word and the word is God. Well, if we take that, because we are God-like, we were made in God's image, that means that we have the power of creation just like God did, because we are the only animals that can speak.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at your world, your dream, your nightmare, it's your creation,
Yeah.
and you can change it by using your words.
Mm-hmm. But like we said earlier, like the book said, there's that double-edged sword, right? And the book talks about how your words are spells.
Hmm.
And I loved this part of the book because they gave a great example of how our words can cast spells on others based on our opinions. And it said, I see a friend and give them an opinion that just popped into my mind. And I say, I see that color, that kind of color in your face in people who are going to get cancer. Now, if they listen to your words and they agree with what you said, they'll get cancer in less than a year.
Hmm. Yeah,
And-
that's how powerful words are. I mean, think about it. Like, even when they talked about like telling, her daughter that she had an ugly voice and she couldn't sing, and now her daughter never sings ever for the rest of
Yeah,
her life, even though it's something that brought her joy or any of that. Like, it's those things. Like, it made me, it's funny because like even like raising, Trinity, or even, yeah, raising Trinity is like, you realize how sometimes that this was done to you, but then also like how you pass it down.
yeah,
And even like, and deprogramming with that is even like, I had to go back and be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean this. This was like something I needed to obviously work on, like, and going back and apologizing and being humble about it and moving on. Right. Like,
absolutely. I think, yeah, that's just been the huge theme for me is the humility or the humbleness that comes with this, where it's like that open vulnerability too that this creates with people and the people around you is like when you fuck up, you're able to say like, dude, I fucked up. I'm sorry. Like because of this, and I am still working on that, and I apologize if that caused any harm for you or, whatever the case may be. It's just that humility and being able to look at yourself is like so powerful now for me, at least, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
it makes me feel really good when I recognize something, even though I don't feel good about the words I just used or said. I'm
You're
like,
right.
I'm still practicing. I'm still working on it. Like,
And we will until we pass on to the other dimensions. Like I
or I become a witch that lives in the woods and I have no influences around me anymore other than nature.
or I go to the woods and you never see me again.
And you never see me again.
I will be that person in your quest. You have to go to the witch in the woods and you have to get the blah 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 and
Uh-huh. Yep. And then if you
Mhm.
think our dyslexia is bad now, good luck
Wizard,
find good luck figuring out what we're even saying by then.
wizard.
It's gonna be our own code.
I feel like that's happening in real time, actually.
Yeah.
Sometimes my words are like, oh. And then I realize what I'm doing is because I am trying all the time, and I don't know why, but I'm trying to always to be efficient, that I use other words that people don't understand, but like to me, it's like makes perfect sense. So I'm talking in code.
Yeah, usually I understand you too.
Right.
Something comes out and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what two words you just put together to make that word. Keep
Mm-hmm.
going.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I got you.
I like, oh, this is not helpful when I'm talking to muggles.
Yeah, for real. Sometimes I'll start talking about something that I find so interesting and people are like, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, you know what? Ignore me. I'm talking, but there are others listening. You might not see them. It's fine. Like
Right.
I look like I'm talking to myself. I'm not. It's good.
You'll get it in about 5 years. It's fine.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Um, so there was another part of the book that I really wanted to talk about too, and it was, or well, this chapter, I should say, where it was saying that when we were domesticated as youth, right, our parents and siblings gave their opinions about us without even thinking, and we believe those opinions and live in fear over those opinions. Now, the big part about that I want to talk about that Nicole and I have talked about pretty often is the fear part.
Hmm.
Because when I think it was even in our it's hard to be a teenager, or being a teenager is hard episode, we talked about that fear and like how the opinions of others can cause so much fear and cause us to shut things down. And we believe those opinions and those are agreements we're making.
Hmm. Especially when we're young and we don't know. And our guides are trying to, or really it's done to keep us safe, fed, and loved.
Yeah.
And really, like, that's why, when people are kids and they're living under their parents' roof, they end up like kind of mimicking those behaviors and stuff it's not until they like move out that they start developing their own opinions
Mm-hmm.
because somebody they meet that they like or they feel they put in a place where they feel like they're cooler, better, they know stuff, whatever. And we believe what they say is truthful. So they could either break that spell or put a new spell on you too. So like it could be, but you have to use this is where finding your discernment and like shifting through the stuff that's coming in and not taking it personally and that kind of stuff. Like, oh, that's your opinion. And like, I don't have to agree with it. And that's okay, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have to get to this place of like, opinions are opinions, and it's okay for everybody to have one.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change your opinion. We can have a debate about it and expand our consciousness around the topic.
Mm-hmm.
But necessarily, it's not the point of like changing your opinion.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I think that's a huge thing that I still struggle with sometimes is like that feeling of like I love a good debate too. uh, Nicole's husband and I like will get on the topic of politics or some big idea, and it
Mhm.
sounds like it's heated, but to me, I'm like, no, this is good. Like we're like actually like having a good debate, bringing things to each other, and then I leave feeling like, huh, I want to like know more about this topic now. Now I want to
Right.
like expand my own consciousness and like get into other ideas because it is interesting to me, and it's like I just he's one of my favorite people to debate with because then like the conversation's over and we're right back to normal. And I struggle with that
Hmm.
sometimes with people that are very and I'm not going to say this correctly, so let me try to shift through this. It's like the people that can't debate without getting angry that you're not changing your opinion. I don't think I'm
Hmm.
saying that the way I want to, but that's the best way it's coming out. So those kinds of conversations are hard for me because it's one of those things where it's like, well, I don't want to change your opinion. Why do you want to change mine? You know, it's like
Hmm.
you're allowed to have that. And I'm not trying to change it for you.
Well, I think at some point we reversed it, and it's almost like we're supposed to all get together and believe the same thing, and that's
Mhm.
not quite how the world works. And, we also have gotten to this point where we don't research things and we are headline reader kind of people.
Yeah.
And the problem with being, there's no depth to it. So the great thing about you having a conversation with somebody, then you actually researching the opposite side is because it actually goes, no, I looked at that and this is what I thought. So like, if you're only reading the stuff that agrees with you,
Yeah.
then you have nothing.
Yeah, it's like you can't have a fully formed, rounded opinion on something if you're not doing the research behind it on both ends, because you could
Hmm.
find conflicting things on each end that you're like, okay, like that doesn't make sense. Like this
Right,
on this side doesn't make sense. This on this side doesn't make sense. And I'm kind of somewhere in the middle on it because I believe parts of this and parts of this, and I don't
right,
believe this and I don't believe that. And it's like
right.
this big, well out formed idea now in your head. And granted, is it all true? Probably not. I think that's the other thing is like a lot of theories are theories.
Well, that's the thing. And it's not necessarily something that like we have to die on the cross on right now, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not like they're like, do you believe this way or do you believe this way? And if you believe this way, we're gonna burn you at the cross. And you're like, ooh, I gotta make a real decision because so we can leave it in this gray kind of area because I don't have to jump off the cliff on it, right? Like,
Yeah.
which is kind of nice, like at this point. So, but that's the thing is if we really think about it, like me yelling at you about changing your opinion is not going to change your opinion.
Right.
Me saying that like you're stupid or dumb for thinking that way is also not going to change your opinion. And
Right.
do we really think that you're stupid and dumb just because you think a different thought than I do? No. Right. Like this is why the whole like political party and how people really act with this kind of like, oh, they're dumb. Like the Republicans, they're dumb. They think this way. And they're like, well, you're a sheep, blah, blah, blah. And this you're dumb because you're only doing this. And it's like, oh, okay, calm down. Because like really the thing is that do you really think that these billions of people are dumb? And
Yeah.
vice versa, do you really think these people are dumb?
Right.
Just because they have a different opinion than you. No, what's really going on is that you're trying to do the best what you can with what you know, and these are the things that you think are good. It mirrors the same way. These are good people. They're only doing what is right that they think is right for their family, for the people they love, like all that stuff. Like that's really what this is. And I just have it's funny to me when I see people debate like that when they come back and they say you're stupid and wrong. And I'm like, well, that's not hopeful.
In my mind, I always go, well, that debate's over. It's not even a debate anymore.
Right,
I'm
right.
like, this is stupid.
To me, it's like you've ran out of options to say. And because you're at this, like, you're like, oh, I got to the bottom of my barrel and I got no more ingredients to like pull out of my like beautiful barrel. You ran out of shit to say. So then you're just like, you go back to the caveman days and you're like, well, you're dumb. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this guy with a PhD is clearly dumb. Okay.
It's like, again, yet again, Nicole brings us to another thing that was in the book about like how how like it's stupid. It's a great example. It's a great example of like you may believe that you're stupid, right? You may have this belief that for as long as you can remember, like I'm dumb and like I don't know enough and blah blah blah. And then one day someone can look at you and say like you're not stupid. Like, and it could be enough of that, those words hook you enough that it resonates with you enough that that is a broken word spell now. It's gone
Right.
and
Right.
that can change. And I feel like a lot of that comes with mindfulness of like we've gone over gaslighting and how we have a gaslight city we all love to live on. And
Mm-hmm.
we've gone over all these things within that city that a lot of that is based on our own opinions of ourselves that could be
Mm-hmm.
spells that we got from others or from ourselves because we heard one thing we didn't feel adequate enough and then we create this whole image in our head of who we are.
Mm-hmm. It's very much true because, like, I specifically remember, and it happens every once in a while, somebody goes, you're like this. And I was like, and it's almost like this epiphany because, like, all of a sudden you become so aware of like your whole life. It's like one of those movie like things where, like, all of a sudden you spanned your entire life and you're like, oh my God. And everything changes just by breaking that spell.
Yeah. One that was big for me was trying, and I still have to work on this sometimes because that spell is deeply rooted. But it's like my body image
Mm-hmm.
is a good one of telling, like sometimes I'll tell myself I'm ugly and I'm fat.
Mm-hmm.
It's the worst fucking spell ever. It's the worst. It's just like chain linked in there, and every time I break a chain, I feel better. But then sometimes
Right.
I'll catch another chain and I'm like, and like I feel like I've become very aware of when I'm being not nice to myself or my body.
Mm-hmm.
And like this has helped a lot is like just that mindfulness of like being aware of the words I'm using, even internally.
Well, and that's the thing is like we're practicing being better to ourselves, loving ourselves, right? That's what this is all for.
Yes.
And it it starts off with like, okay, I'm going to go to this class and I'm going to learn these new things. And we learn this over and over again, be impeccable with your word, but you're taking this personally and you do it over and over again until you run the marathon. And then you realize everything that you practice on actually comes up when you need it.
Mhm.
So then you get to a point where you're like, I feel this way, or I'm saying this, and you stop immediately. Like it becomes more of a tool at that point
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, okay, if I'm in a situation, then and I don't feel good in it, but like I have to be here for some reason, an event arises, and then instead of being victim to it, I now have this tool to be like, all right, I don't like this energy. So bring in divine light, let's drain it out. So then you're actively helping yourself like work through this hell and to make it a better place.
Yeah. We're basically making our brains, or wherever you'd like to call our internal world, a nicer, happier place to live. We're not gonna live in Gaslight City anymore.
No, because we're not going to be the victim because we have the tools to change it.
Hmm.
And that's the thing is like being impeccable with your words, the spells that you're creating. These are the things that are going to really change your life. And it's not again, when you deal with stuff like this, it's not immediate because our brains are not going to do it well.
Yeah.
We've seen people that have dealt with the occult or with stuff like this, and they go a little crazy because it's not, they're trying to do too much too quickly. And their
Hmm.
brains aren't going to like catch up with it. Most people think they want their life to change like that, but they don't.
Yeah.
It's going to be too much too quick. I mean, think about it. Like, if you get into a car accident and you get into a coma and your brain stops time for you there, and then you come into a new world that's say 20 years later, and now you have like AI and cars that like run for you, and like it's so much for you to adjust at because like you came from like horse-drawn carriages and now you have cars that fly. Do you know what I mean? Like your mind is not ready for stuff like that, and that's why it tends to go a little bit slower and methodical.
Yes. I'm so glad you talked about that. That actually just the other day, one of the people I work with was saying how that happened to them, and I had said that too. I was like, dude, you probably did too much too fast. I call it your mental threshold, dude. You almost shoved yourself right off the edge. You were
Right.
almost in a free fall, and you didn't
Right.
know where you were gonna land. Like that
Right.
happens. I did that. I get it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like,
No,
um,
it's those places that we've all kind of been, and I don't beat myself over it anymore.
mm-mm.
Because I've know that on this journey, I've been in places where like, well, why do I got to do all this work?
Yeah,
It's exhausting.
it is.
And you're sitting there crying, you're like, well, I just don't want to do this anymore because like nobody else is doing it. Why aren't they doing it? And it's
And then
like,
and then that turns into a screw you because you're not doing the work.
right.
Yikes.
And then I'm like, but the nice thing is you kind of have your little tantrum
Hmm.
and then you pull yourself up and then you like dust
Yep.
yourself off and you're like, all right, I gotta go.
So there's a chapter I wanted to read verbatim too, from the book that goes along with all of this. And it says, being impeccable with your word is not using the word against yourself. If I see you in the street and I call you stupid, it appears that I'm using the word against you, but really I'm using my word against myself because you're going to hate
Mhm.
me for this, and your hating me is not good for me. Therefore, if I get angry and with my words and all that emotional poison to you, I'm using the word against myself. Because if I love myself, I'll express love outwardly through interactions with others. And then there was another excerpt, and it said that this is the correct use of our energy because it means to use your energy in the direction of truth and love for yourself.
Yes.
And I was like,
It,
oh, love that.
and this goes back to the fact of like, if God is you and you are God, I am you, you are me. If I do something to you, I'm only doing it to me.
Uh-huh.
And that's the thing is like we see when we project onto other people, we see what we want to see. And we all do this where we look at somebody and go like, oh God, that person's dumb. And it's like, no, that's because we're rejecting that part of ourself of being dumb
Yeah.
because we know it's bad and wrong.
Yes.
Right. So it's hard because like it's almost like this like, well, I'm just being funny, or I'm just doing this. I'm light sense of humor. We blanket over with this whole thing when it's really this like weird diabolical kind of like poison that we easily spew, and then we gaslight everybody by like, well, I was just joking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of thing it's like we really kind of need to be aware of, even like at this point, like, oh, I don't like that girl or that guy or that person or whatever. And I look at him and I'm like, now what's really hard is I go, I don't like her because I don't like that part in me.
Mm-hmm.
And she's here to show me that part that I don't love
Yeah.
inside myself. And that's the big lesson there. And
Mm-hmm.
that is a hard, well, for me, it was a hard pill to swallow because I like to get on my little righteous horse and be like, I am good and light and I'm like, fuck,
Yeah, same though.
right?
So this leads me into another part of this book that, God, fuck, I want to talk about this so bad. And I know we've kind of touched on this before, but I feel like this is a great time to talk about this. So with going into this, we have to become aware of how we're casting spells on others and ourselves. And what we're getting into right now is gossip. And this book talks about gossip like it is a black magic, and at its very worst, because it's pure poison. It has become the way we feel close to others because it makes us feel better to see someone else feeling as badly as we do. And the reason we gossip and it comes easy is because we believe that these are things about ourselves. So think about the times you've gossiped about the person you love the most to gain the support of
Mm-hmm.
others for your viewpoint. Your
Mm-hmm.
viewpoint isn't necessarily true, and your opinion comes from your beliefs and your own egos and your own dreams. And when
Mm-hmm.
we start to pay attention to this first agreement, any emotional poison will eventually be cleared out from our minds, and gossip's going to be hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Gossip well, it's so tolerated. It's
Yeah, it's how
so,
we
and
feel
it's
close to others.
absolutely, it's a connection that we think like, oh, let me tell you about this. And, we even under the guise of like, I'm trying to process this, or, like they're just not doing it right, or um that kind of thing, to just be supported and heard by words that it's really just to make ourselves feel better, is really what it comes down to.
It also talked about justification in this too. It's
Mhm.
because we have this need to justify ourselves. Our ego steps up and says, no, I am just in what I am saying about this person. And it's like, when you realize that that's what's happening, if you feel gross,
Right, right.
you feel really gross. You're like, ugh, I don't like that.
Well,
Nope.
it's shame and guilt, and nobody wants to know that, right? Like, nobody wants to know that about themselves. Like,
Right.
and like I said, it's so tempting and it's so tolerated.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the demons will be like, no, no, come tell us your woes. We are your friends. We want to hear all of the bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Please, please. And we have whole girls' nights and and I'm not saying that girls are the only ones doing it because we know that's not true. But
Right.
because I am a girl, this is where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's under the guise of like, that's how we connect to other people.
Yeah.
Instead of being brave enough to actually talk to the person that we actually need to talk to about it and changing that behavior or coming to a conclusion or something like that. It's really what it comes down to. It's addictive and it's a drug, and we love it.
True. It's like the book said, it's that poison. And
Mm.
it makes me think about, like you just said, an addiction. You get addicted to that poison because it gives you a high in the moment, and then as soon as that high's gone, you're like, fuck, that sucked.
Right? Alcohol is the same way. Like
Hmm.
it's accepted, it's tolerable. We use it to celebrate and cheerful. We use it to, I had a bad day, I need a drink. Like
Hmm.
we use it all in the same way on like, and that's why it's so hard to kick.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's kind of all I had for the first agreement. Um, if you're ready to move into the second one.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So the second agreement is don't take anything personally. Now we've gone into this lately. We talk about it often because this is one, like we were talking in the beginning, that I really, really use all the time because I am a victim and I'm a recovering victim.
I am a recovering
Um,
victim.
but to repeat like what this is. It's whatever happens around you, you are not supposed to take anything, anything personally. You take things personally because deep down you agree with whatever was said. And as
Right.
soon as you agree, the poison that goes through you, you get trapped. And
Hmm.
what caused you to get trapped is what the book called was personal importance. And personal importance is taking things personally. And it's the maximum, the book said this, and I love this. It's the maximum expression of selfishness because we make the assumption that everything is about us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, it feels
Yeah.
so good to be so aware of that part of myself, but at the same time, dude, it sucks.
Well, the great thing about it is you get a chance to love this part of you that nobody loved, right? This is where your empty vastness is at because you have sent her to the darkness and was like, no, no, you are banished to purgatory and I will never see you again, right?
Yep.
So this is where we get to like, yeah, I'm a little egotistical, right? And now I'm
Yes.
aware of it and I'm shining the light on this dark part of myself. Or, a lot of shame and guilt on a lot of things that we feel on those people in ourselves directly. Like we know by society, by our culture, by friends, by whatever, that these are bad and wrong. When really, if you omit them, they're leaving a hole. This is where Teal Swan talks about fragmentation,
Mm,
and you're not a whole person
yeah.
because you took that piece and you were like, no, no, you go over there. And what happens is that becomes powerful because it's in the darkness.
Mm,
And then it rears its head when you become, when you, when you stop in a moment of keeping it encaged.
yeah.
So if you get to a point where you have become unhinged, the cage door comes off. And that's when it rears its head, or alcohol, or drugs, or whatever. But
Oh,
the
yeah.
cage comes open.
Happens a lot in alcohol. And,
Yeah.
this is where I have become very aware of myself when I'm drinking because, um, if something comes up when I've been drinking, it's something I haven't talked about and I haven't faced. I don't believe that, when you say things when you're drunk, you don't mean them.
Yeah, no.
I don't believe that at all.
Mm-mm.
Because I know myself now enough to know that when I say something when I'm drunk, it's because I haven't been saying it and been holding it back. Granted, yes, that was a horrible time to say it and it should have come out then. But obviously, it's bad enough and it's big enough now that it can come out during this time, which means that now we're going to talk. Let's put a pin in this. We need to talk about this tomorrow. And I do talk about it because I have to, because otherwise it's just going to keep getting worse.
You're
Like you
right.
said, that cage is going to keep growing in its cage, and I'm not going to be able to contain it anymore.
No, you're not going to be able to keep it in there because it will
Mm-hmm.
come out. And these parts, like you know, we are passive aggressive creatures sometimes, right? Like
Oh
we
God,
don't
yeah.
want to like come at it right away. We're trying to go around the back end. So then it starts coming out with like, well, if you would have just done this, or if somebody would have just done this, or, like these little bits of passive aggressiveness where somebody has to actually go, do you need to talk about something? Or like, would you like to address something? Like, like that whole
Yeah.
passive, because I can't say it right forward. You have to go around the back door and be like,
Yeah.
well, if you would have just done this, then we wouldn't be here and blah, blah, blah.
Well, and like a big part of this too is like when we were just talking about being impeccable with your words and you agree to these spells, right? This is where this comes in too, is like this not taking anything personally, is like having that belief about yourself and then somebody triggers it. Like, let's say, because we throw this word around a lot, we've talked about this, the narcissist. let's say somebody looks at you and says, "You're a narcissist." Well, because you already agreed to this spell from something else. You heard you were a
Hmm.
narcissist one time, you agreed with it, and now that triggers you. And because you have this poison in you, you're gonna spew it right back because you you're taking that personally because you already agreed to it.
And it's a defense mechanism, right? So you spew it back, you spew the poison back because you're defending yourself, right? Like, and really, when we it's interesting about narcissism because I feel like it's more of a protection than it is anything else. This is a hurt, not to say that you should put up with it. And if it becomes to your detriment, that's a whole different thing and a whole different journey that whatever. We're not talking about that right now. What I'm saying is that this person had to create this persona to protect itself.
Yeah,
And that's why narcissism has been created. It's not this evil thing. A it really is a defense mechanism. And I do feel kind of sad about people. And I have narcissistic tendencies and I can feel it when it comes out now. Like I'm aware enough when I'm feeling very narcissistic in my wherever I'm at. And
same.
I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
so I try to be, again, it's this whole thing of being mindful and being uh, aware of what I'm doing because my goal is not to necessarily produce more harm than good.
Right.
And if I get out of this life and that's what I've done, I
Cool.
feel I've done pretty good.
I agree. So, okay, like that I was there's sorry. Something popped in, went out, that popped in, went out.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's coming back when I'm going to say this because going along with everything you just said too, like nothing other people do is about you. We've said that, and I'm going to keep saying it because even when a situation seems so personal, it has nothing to do with you. What others say, do, and the opinions they give are according again to the agreements that they have in their own minds. And their point of view comes from all the programming they've received during their domestication. So whatever someone thinks or feels, it is it to put it plainly, it's their problem and not yours, and it's how they see the world. You don't have to do anything with that if you choose not to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because this is where it gets, a little bit kind of tricky is the fact like if somebody thinks I'm evil because I call myself a witch, does that automatically make me evil? Or what I like to tell a lot of people is like, if you don't believe I'm a witch, does that make me less powerful?
Yeah,
Right? Like
yeah,
it's really your opinion and your thing. And it's funny because like the example I have of this is when we put down Raya. Um, I have beliefs with my animals that I'm not one that's going to do cancer treatments. I'm not going to use my pet as a test subject because that's the way I believe it is. I don't, but I don't also, that's my opinion. And like,
yeah,
if you have a different route with your animals, that's great. I'm not saying that it's wrong or bad. I'm saying that this is how I feel about it. Um, so we had to put her down. There was a sickness. It wasn't getting better. And she basically, this is why I don't do it, is because she basically stares into my soul and was like, I knew it was time. So much so that I had to call Rob up crying because, when you have this kind of information, you're afraid of what people are going to say to you
yeah,
because death is so wrong and bad. And it's a very scary thing because if somebody doesn't agree with you, it's fearful for me. Um, and all the way around because also when we took her to the vet, I know that they didn't really agree because they felt we should have done more. And I realized at that moment when the vet was actually giving the shot, is that everything that he did from the time he was born to that moment right there is exactly why he's formed his opinion. Every step, every schooling, every parent that he went through, every article he's read, every step he has taken to that point is his opinion. And this is when it slapped me in the face of this agreement really like sank into me and was like, oh, I get it.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean that like I'm bad and wrong or he's bad and wrong. Again, it's a difference of an opinion.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily have to agree because really at this point it's not about us. At this point it was about her and her passing and we needed to make it as much as um comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
But that we could all, again, it's ego because this hurts and it's trying to protect us. And like this is its job. And, this is where, but it's it was a very interesting moment. So that's the whole thing is if you keep on with this, like eventually you'll get a download where you can't unsee it. And it makes it a little bit easier to kind of like run through life with all this.
Yeah, that was a beautiful example. I remember when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh,
Oh,
cried. I was crying. Everybody,
yeah.
the world was crying for that beautiful soul.
Yeah, that poor baby. But like I feel like we get these pets that especially with the Danes is like or even like any maybe it's purebred. I don't know what the spell is, but we call to us these pets that have a short attention or a short space on this earth.
Like lifespan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as well does it tear my heart out? Absolutely. I'm a human being, right? But I also know I'm doing an honorful job at not putting them through more harm than good.
Yeah. Aw.
I know it's fine. It's leaking
Well,
out, and I'm trying to suck it back into my
she's
eyeballs, but
leaking, bleeding
I'm
hearts of the world
leaking.
unite.
I'm
Well, I
leaking.
have another good example of this too that the book used that was actually a good example and not so much a put down, just to try to change the pace for you, buddy. That it said that even if someone looks at you and tells you how wonderful you are, they're not saying that because of you.
Mm-mm.
This is how deep
Mm-hmm.
this fucking agreement goes. You
Mm-hmm.
already know you're wonderful. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
necessary to believe other people who tell you you are wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Even the opinions you have of yourself too are not necessarily true. That one's hard
That one's hard.
because
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need to take whatever you hear in your own head personally.
Personally.
So you have the right, and I know it sounds weird, which we'll go into this further, but you have the right to believe or not believe the voices and the right not to take what they say personally.
Mhm.
Now, for me personally, this take a shot every time we say personally. Um, for me personally, this is where the book, yeah, good luck. The, um, that's a podcast, not a book. Eckhart Tolle's book about mindfulness, The Power of Now. That's where this has helped me a lot because it's allowed me to slow my brain down to where I can recognize who in my head is saying what to me, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
Because again, we all have these hurt kids, we have these hurt adult versions of ourselves, we have these, like Nicole called fragments of ourselves that create their own almost personas in our heads that tell us things about ourselves. So when I was talking earlier about like the body shaming that I will do to myself, I recognize that hurt girl that had things happen to her or things said to her that made her feel like that and the agreement that she made with that. And I can recognize it to where I can start integrating it or trying to heal that person part of myself, as opposed to just believing whatever my mind's telling me about this myself.
Right. Right. Well, because these agreements here, especially with body shaming in women, it is done for centuries, right?
Yeah,
We have been taught that if we're not pretty, we're not useful.
we're worthless.
We're worthless, right?
Yep.
So, and again, like when you start getting these two, is I've noticed like when I see commercials, how they're playing on all of those isms inside your head because they also have been the people that have put those agreements in there. It's not just my mom and my dad, right? Or
Yes.
like adults that are in my life that were forming me. It's also society and culture.
There's a great example right now out there that when we were in Key West, I kept seeing and it kept bothering me of this woman, I cannot remember her name, she's an actress, but essentially this guy runs into her and he says, "Oh, excuse me, ma'am." And she said, "Ma'am, like
Oh
who
yeah.
how old do you think I am? You know what? Don't answer that. It's not that old." And I was like, "Wow, this is
Mm-hmm.
so bizarre. Like we're still age shaming
Yeah.
a woman, of
Ourselves.
course, too."
Ourselves.
Yeah, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, what a bizarre commercial. Because like we're still doing this. It's still, you're so right. It's still in media everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh God, that stuck with me where I was like, damn, I can't believe we're still doing this.
Oh no, that's how they make all the money, right? I mean, this is
True.
my conspiracy brain. Sorry, guys. But like it how many people do you have in your chair that are upset with themselves because they're just not good enough?
Oh yeah,
They're
we've talked about
too
that so
fat,
many
they're too
times.
old. How many people have you talked to that goes, "Well, I'm getting old, so I have to get married because, I won't have anybody to find me attractive because I'll be old because, once a woman's old, we are useless." And then now we're damaged because I'm old. And this is something that we are literally, it's happening right now because even Lore has that song, Ribs, that says it's scary getting old. She's not even that old, right? Like
No.
comparatively to like, I don't know, whoever. But because it's all a comparative thing. Like I have been told so many times, well, you're not that old. Yeah, but this is the oldest I've been
You're right. Yes, that's so, even me.
ever,
I'm
right?
like, dude,
Like,
this is the oldest I've ever been.
right, right. So the interesting fact of like, if you just, it's, it wants you, this world, the society wants you to feel inadequate in every step of the way so that you are a consumer and you buy the things that you need to buy to keep yourself young and pretty. Oh my God, if I'm not young and pretty, you're not going to want to look at me. If you don't want to look at me, you're not going to love me and I'm not going to get what I need. And then I won't have no friends and then I'll die alone.
Makes me want to like jump back and be like, ah, stop.
But every time this is triggered, this is exactly what runs through your head so fast that you can't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's why you buy that thing and that's why you get that facial and that's why you do this and like blah, blah, blah. Like none of this stuff is like, yes, it makes you feel good and blah, blah, blah. And maybe it's doing something to create your skin to look more youthful. Like we're so obsessed with like living and we all have to be 12. I mean, at 12, we probably want to be like 22. And we all want to like, I always tell people like that are in their 60s and 70s and maybe they're single and they're looking for love. And I'm like, they're like, well, I'm going to get wrinkly. Nobody's going to want to see this and da da da. And I'm like, who are you trying to impress? Are you
I,
trying to impress the 18-year-old? Because
yeah. I think a lot of that too, in my own personal opinion, that I've noticed is because there is a huge fear of death still.
absolutely.
And the closer that you think you're getting to it, even though we could die literally in 2 seconds, it just we really put death and older age together, even though people die all the time,
Right.
you
All
know?
right.
But I think that's where it comes in too, is I really see this big fear of death behind people that are aging. And I'm like, dude, you're not dead right now. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You're acting
Right.
like you're dead right now.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is like, even if you're 60 and you live to 100, you still have 40 years.
But I think that, Well, this is a big topic, and I know we're off track here, but even with this, I want to say like where this is where my mind goes back to my freaking saying that I say it a lot. Time's a man-made concept. We still have we're not even, we're 4 months into this year. We still have a good amount of time even in this year. And
Yeah.
I'm like, we don't pay attention to the days and the movement of the day outside of looking at a clock. And I'm like, it's killer to me because we have such little regard for time, but not man-made time, nature's
Mm-hmm.
timing, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. If I'm going down the right path here, making sense.
Yeah, no, you are. Like it's a hard concept to actually communicate and talk about because
Yeah.
like we do have to live by time because I can't just show up at my
Yeah.
work at any time and be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I am open.
Yes.
Like,
Like even today, and I was getting ready for the podcast, and I was like, God, the way that my body so badly wants to be on nature's timing, because today is a sleepy day. It is a sleepy, cozy, hibernating day.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think when it comes to age, when it comes to beauty, we care so much about the time clock that like that's exactly what we're doing is we're looking at it and we're saying, well, I'm 47. You could easily be like, I'm just never gonna look like these 20-year-olds. And that's a great point is why do you want to look like a 20-year-old again? Dude, my 20s
Right.
sucked. I'm so glad to be moving out of that period and into a new time period where I have more knowledge. I have more backing of myself. I feel better in myself.
Absolutely. Like that's the thing about, I think there's a couple concepts of calling myself a witch that like, and one of it was that it empowers me to grow older. My
Mm.
wisdom, my spells, my magic, everything that I'm working on at this point in time is all getting me ready to be old, to pass on, to, do all these things that are super scary because I'm going to go there anyway. So, like, we're just fooling ourselves if we think that we're not getting there.
That's a really cool concept. I didn't realize I kind of do that too, but with my beauty, where I say that I can't wait. I hope I go really gray because it's going to be my ultimate witch form is I'm going to have mostly black hair with gray streaking on the side. And it makes me
Hmm.
so excited for it in my head where I'm like, oh, getting older is cool. I'm going to be so cool.
Well, I also learned that, like, I think it's U of M that, uh, like, if you're at 65, I think it is, they'll let you take classes for free. Do you know how bad I want to be 60 fucking 5 now?
Okay, that's really exciting.
Right? Like
Yeah,
there's some benefits that I'm like,
another stupid benefit that I'm really excited about, but we actually talk about often because Jordan likes to joke that I'm older than him and that I'm like an old lady. And I'm like,
mhm,
listen, mother trucker, when I hit that senior discount, you ain't getting it.
mm-mm,
I'm like separate bills,
mm-mm.
baby. I'm getting my senior discount. I'm so excited.
Yep. You're like, well, and you don't get it because
I ain't sharing it. I'm
no,
not. Nope, I'm getting that senior discount for everything.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, reeling it back in. There's a part from this book too that I really want to read verbatim again because there was
Hmm.
just some parts that I'm like we can't not share this. And this one's about lying, okay? Because when it comes to taking things personally, a big part of that is, well, you lied to me.
Hmm.
Okay. So it says wherever you go, you'll find people lying to you. And as your awareness grows, you will notice that you also lie to yourself. Do not expect people to tell you the truth because they also lie to themselves. You have to trust yourself and choose to believe or not to believe what someone says to you.
Hmm.
Then the responsibility is on you.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like there's a tug of war going on right now about who's responsible for what. And some people's opinions, it's people aren't responsible for themselves, so then we have to be responsible for them. And then the other people are being responsible for themselves, right?
Hmm.
It's the whole thing about like I go to the bartender and I drink to my capacity and then I get in and drive and I cause an accident. Who's at fault? Some people would say the bartender because they didn't stop me from drinking or stop me from they're now responsible for my actions.
Yeah.
And I don't find that being truthful. I find that being, like, oh, well, you served me. It's your fault.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
I agree with that.
but that's starting to grow. And because we sue this bartender because they blah, blah, blah. Like it's a whole thing. Lying to me has two forms. One is malicious, and I want you to do something that I know that you won't do, and I can't be forthright to you, right? Because I know you'll say no. The other one is I'm too scared to tell you the truth because I'm afraid of your actions or afraid of what you're going to say. And these are why lies are there. They're not necessarily there to do harm all the time. It's not a personal thing, it's more of a fear thing.
Hmm. Yeah, because the book said that the point of not taking, when it comes to the lying too, is that the point of not taking things personally is that we can never get hurt by what other people say and do. And even if someone does lie to you, it's okay because all forms of lying come from fear. And if someone says one thing but does another, you're lying to yourself if you don't listen to their actions.
Absolutely. This is the big thing. And I know we hear it all the time, but like actions speak louder than words.
They
So
do.
look at the actions. Don't look at the words. If they're saying pretty words, but then they're not doing any action, then you're fool. This is where we get into that. This causes that wheel, that
Hmm.
hamster wheel of thought. This is really what a good motivation of that hamster wheel going is that you see one thing but the actions aren't matching what they're saying. They're not being impeccable with their word. And then your mind has to run it through because you know there's something fault, but you want to believe the lie. You don't want to believe the truth.
Yeah.
And this is also where it's at too, is that some lies we want to believe, some illusions we want to believe, and we want to like immerse ourselves in that illusion.
Hmm. Yeah. I, yeah. Hmm. I feel like with this second agreement, the more that it becomes habit, the less you'll find that things rock you and you'll feel more centered. Like even if somebody does, let's say, lie to you and or you believe that it was a lie, even if it was, because that happens too, right? Sometimes we're like, well, you lied to me, and it's like, no, I didn't. I told you the truth. And there's lots of forms of this anyways. The more that you can adapt this one and make this a habit, the easier life gets. Like a lot easier. Because like
Hmm.
then you're not getting hurt left and right. And you're not be like, well, you hurt me and you did this to me. And it's like again, this one I feel like really pulls us out of the victimhood of like, you did this to me.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing of like, if you come in and you say, do you like this dress? And I say yes, because I know you like it,
Yeah.
you know? And it's not necessarily a lie. This is an opinion. So we have to be very careful of like, am I telling you the truth just to hurt you? Or like, do you know what I mean? Like it's a fine
Hmm.
line. And this is where it gets very feathery and very like you have to realize when lying is lying and opinions are opinion, in my opinion. Or you can even counter that question with a, well, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear, or do you really want my opinion? Right?
Right.
That's a big one because that's different. If you want me to agree with you, it's like if somebody comes with problems with you, do you ask them, do you want me to fix it or do you want me to listen?
It's the best question,
Absolutely, because then you know what's required of you.
what they're looking for. You don't have to guess and you
I don't
don't
have to
have to
guess.
overstep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So start questioning with questions. Like,
Yeah.
do you want me to say yes, or do you want my real opinion? Right? Like, and really it all, when you're talking about whether you like this or don't, or whether you like this painting or not, it's all an opinion. Because what I find beautiful, you're not necessarily going to find beautiful. What looks good on you is not necessarily going to, not everybody's going to see this and agree, because again, they have their own doubts and fragmentation in the way they look at the world.
Hmm.
If they think a woman is supposed to be 5'7" and 125 pounds, then beauty for them is different,
Yeah,
because of,
absolutely.
because of the program that they have and stuff like that. Because nobody cares. It's not like I have less friends because I'm at a weight that society considers overweight. It's not like I have less friends. It's not that I have, really what makes me have less friends if I'm overweight and I hate myself, it's because I hate myself that makes me have less friends, because I think I'm not worthy of having these friends.
Hmm.
And that's where we get into like that little gray stormy cloud. Like, you're using this to push people away, and not necessarily like, oh, a lot of times when I feel insecure about what I wear, I remember that it doesn't fucking care, and this is a meat suit. And I
Without
go,
flesh pockets.
without flesh pockets. We're working on that. I'm sure I could get some like installed. I mean,
Probably.
right. Yeah, flesh pockets. Blech.
I am glad you brought that up though, because that is one of my personal favorite things to do, especially working in the hair industry where there are a lot of opinions. And don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean it in like we've all learned different things within the hair industry, and there are 50 ways to do one thing. So it's like I always like love to ask people like, what would you like to hear right now? Because it's like they could either say, well, what you would do, or like, I just want you to validate what I'm saying or thinking, or I need help with this, or like, it's just, it gives the opportunity of more understanding. So, one, I'm not wasting my energy. You're not wasting your energy. And then we're not fighting with our energies because we have two different opinions and you didn't ask for my opinion.
Right. Well, or guessing. Like, that's another thing. It's like they come
Hmm.
in and they're like, they know that they want something specific, but then they're too insecure to say it. So now we have to guess. So, and I found even to the fact of like, and again, this is probably the people that don't want to be responsible for their actions. Um, they will, if I start questioning what they want and start digging through it, they get kind of frustrated, and they're like, well, no, do whatever you want. Ma'am, I have a whole arsenal of artwork that I can do. Do you really want me to do whatever I want? I'm pretty sure that's not a thing. And I always joke and I'm like, oh, we'll give you a mohawk. I'll shave the sides and we'll make it bright purple. Right. And of course, we get a laugh because like it breaks the tensions and stuff like that. But it's like, see, do you really want me to do whatever I want?
Yeah. I always love doing stuff like that too. Because one of the ones that gets me is I'll have somebody sit down and it's like, okay, so what are we doing today? And they say, I don't know. I'm like, okay, cool, because I don't know either. And then we laugh about it because I'm like, you don't know, I don't know, dude. So what are you doing here?
Right. So that was cool. Let's,
Yeah. I'm like, okay,
I
we can
always say
sit and
too,
talk.
I always say too, it's like getting in the car and not knowing where you're going.
Yeah,
So you want me to just like have no focus or no
I'll
drive?
take us
Like,
somewhere, but I don't know if you like it.
well, that's the other thing too, is that it sets it up for like, well, if you don't like it, you can be like, well, it's all your fault because,
Yeah,
but I mean, that's the thing, is just opening up a safe space for people to ask the certain questions so we can lead to the direction where we need to be.
yeah,
And that's what makes it better because we can like actually be like, oh, okay, so really what you want is low maintenance. And now I can work from that.
I feel like this is a good place to end because this conversation really could go in with our next agreement. And our next
Mm-hmm.
two agreements that we're going to be breaking down in the next episode are don't make assumptions and always do your best. And I feel like this is a good conversation for those two.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like let's keep that in mind because I think that the questioning is going to really come in handy too for that
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
agreement. Like really come in handy.
Because what are the next two is
Don't make assumptions and always do your best.
don't make assumptions and always do your best.
Yeah. And those
Got
are,
assumptions. Oof.
yeah, ugh. The two that I always struggle with, don't take it personal and don't make assumptions. And I'm like, it's fine.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing is you got to be brave enough to ask the question. Like, I'm assuming this. Is this true?
Yep.
But heaven forbid we ask that question because that's scary.
Yeah, we're not in the business of fear, Nicole.
No,
We
no,
we don't like to be scary.
just kidding.
All right, Peeps. Yeah, seriously. All right, Peeps. Well, we'll see you in the next episode for Agreements Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.